This is a total game changer. And I'll introduce myself more formally in the webinar, but after working with thousands of 2- and 4-legged students throughout my career, this is literally the missing link that is not being understood or taught in most of today's training. We're still dealing with behaviors and treating the symptoms of the behavior. And the behavior of our horses is their way of communicating that something's not right. And so I want to dive a little bit more, a little deeper when we get into this webinar because of the level of stress that so many of our horses are under. 98% of domesticated horses, that's right, 98%. That's the number I'm giving it after working with thousands of horses in 25 years of my career. 98% of our horses have dysregulated nervous systems. If you don't really know what that means, just hang on. I'm going to educate you on what a dysregulated nervous system is compared to a regulated nervous system. So my question to all of you is, do you know what dysregulation is? Do you know what regulation is? And if you do, is your horse one of them? And you might not know. So real quick, a dysregulated nervous system basically has everything to do with the sympathetic nervous system in horses and humans. We are very similar in our nervous system and the way that our neural pathways are in the brain and the way everything's interconnected. It's very similar, the hippocampus, memory, everything. And so a dysregulated nervous system means that your horse is living in their sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system. So that's called SNS, the acronym. And that means they're living primarily in their self-preservation mode. So their self-preservation modes are what? Freeze, fight, and flight. Those are their survival instincts. Yes, that's what I'm saying. This is how severe it is. 98% of our horses are living in some level of self-preservation. Maybe not 100% of the time, but they're coming in and out of it. How many of you can relate to your horse being calm one day and spooking the next? That shouldn't happen, and I'm going to explain why. So again, I know this number is shocking, but this single statistic is the missing link in horse training and why we're not making the level of progress that we should be making with our horses, let alone we're not even thinking about the horse as a intelligent, sentient being like we need to. We don't even understand how intelligent horses really are and what amazing quick learners they are. So as long as your horse is stuck on some level in their sympathetic nervous system, they have a dysregulated nervous system. And that's why you have hot and cold, good days and bad days. Or you can do some things, but you can't do everything. And I'm here to tell you, you should be able to do anything and everything with your horse. That's what I've had and continue to have with my current horses. That's what I teach. And I'm going to explain more about how you can achieve that. So when a horse's nervous system is dysregulated, they live in constant state of protection. And a horse in protection cannot learn. It's no different than you and I when we are in a state of defensiveness or fear or chronic anxiety. It's chronic stress. The big word is stress. All of these things are stressing the horse. They're stressing us. And so we're preoccupied, and so is the horse. And I will constantly relate horses to us because, like I said in the very beginning of this webinar, science is proving, recent science and neuroscience is proving how similar horses and humans are in the way that they are hardwired through their neurochemistry, the neural pathways in the brain, the hippocampus area, memory, and the way we learn. So this is key for everyone to understand that when your horse can't focus or they don't feel safe or you can't progress in what you're doing, no matter how hard you try, this is why. They're stuck. And they're stuck internally. So it doesn't matter what physical technique mechanics you do, your horse is only going to get so far, or you're going to feel like you're starting over every day or every so many days. And it shouldn't be like that. My horses, my personal horses, and the students that are dedicated to creating the foundation that I teach, the relationship riding regulation foundation that I teach, you can step away for weeks and months and years at a time. I have so many videos on my YouTube channel throughout the last 7 years where I'm just videoing once a week. I'm not working with my horses. I'm not training my horses. I'm just doing a video with them. But we don't forget what we've learned. And because the foundation is there and the regulation, not dysregulation, the regulation is there. And of course, the relationship is there. It maintains itself. It maintains itself. This means I don't have to go out and lunge my horse to get the excess energy out of my horse. It doesn't work like that. And I'm going to explain more when I dive into this huge epiphany I had 25 years ago when I got back into horses and wanted to make this my career. This is huge, you guys, and this is what no one's teaching. And I want to give you a background and some experience, my experience, so that you can say, hey, it can be easier. It should be easier. There is a better way for me and my horse. So I know this not just from the science that I've studied, but from my personal experience. I bring that to the table. So this is me and Smokey. Smokey was the toughest horse I've ever rehabilitated, and I've rehabilitated thousands. One moment he was quiet and steady, and the next he was a buck and bronc. Now, see, I didn't know back then that he was going catatonic. I didn't know that he was freezing and shutting down. I didn't know anything about that. I had a backyard horse for 25 years since I was 9 or 10 years old. I had no idea what I was getting into. So I couldn't predict him. I couldn't reach him, and I didn't know how. And so when I got back into horses 25 years ago, I took a 2 year sabbatical, so to speak. And that means that I paid myself enough money to pay for myself and my horses. I had three, including Smokey, so that we could study and go wherever we needed to go in the country. I had enough money to study and maintain our lifestyle for 2 years. And then I'm like, in 2 years, I better know enough to start my own business. And that's what I did. So in that 2 years, I was studying with some of the top professionals in many different disciplines because my thing, it still is to this day, is I love to learn. All right. And I want versatility. And I love dressage and I love natural horsemanship and I love liberty and I love reining and I love a nice hunter course where it's a nice steady pace over the jumps, nothing crazy. And I want to be able to work cows, which I've done, especially with Smokey. I want to be able to ride on the beach. I want to go trail riding. I want to do obstacle trail clinic courses. I've judged them at the Massachusetts Equine Fair with Julie Goodnight. I've also put them together at the Harrisburg Expos and been a judge with Kenny Harlow many years ago when I was a traveling clinician with my horses, including Smokey. So I've been there. And when I was studying and I had first acquired my Trinity, as I call it, and Smokey was part of my Trinity, my first three horses back in, I wasn't getting anywhere. And the things that these professionals were telling me, like get after him, he's being disrespectful, push him through it, kick him, ride the buck out of him, I'll ride the buck out of him, put a bucking strap on him. None of it worked. And I personally was not going to put my horse through what some of these guys wanted to do. And I didn't. But even pushing him past my comfort obviously pushed him past his. And it just kept escalating. It never got any better. And and that wasn't just Smokey. I had two other horses at the time that were equally as challenging, but not as dangerous. And so I devote my entire work, my manifesto, as I call it, my big program, my training system that you all are going to learn about. It's dedicated to these three horses of mine that are no longer with us, unfortunately. So, they are the legacy of my work, but they are the ones that made me look deeper. And if it wasn't for my 25-year relationship with my late horse Brandy, and then being on the eastern shore of Maryland, 40 minutes from Chincoteague and Assateague Island, I don't think I would be where I am today. And so that leads me to the next slide, where everything changed when I began studying the wild horses of Assateague Island. So I wasn't getting anywhere with all of these top clinicians and all of these different disciplines that I was studying. I literally had to just put Smokey on the back burner and work with Sundance and Legend at the time because while they might have been easier, only because they didn't have as many triggers as Smokey, like I said, they weren't as dangerous, but they were still challenging in their own unique way. Oh my gosh. But what I kept going back to was my experience with my late backyard horse, where I didn't have these types of issues at all. And remembering, all the wonderful things I was able to do with my horse and how, why there was no stress. Now, why are the three horses that I have, and now I'm starting to encounter other horses, are so stressed out. There's so many triggers. And so it's like you think you get somewhere with them with a specific lesson or exercise, and then you hit a wall. And the more you push, the more it escalates. And so I spent a lot of time studying the wild horses for many different reasons, between rollerblading and biking and jogging. And I was an artist and going to school, Salisbury University as a Bachelor of Fine Arts major. So I spent a lot of time there for a lot of reasons. And then when I could ride during the winter months, you can ride on the beach, October through April. So it's just fascinating how calm and peaceful wild horses are. And there's so many wonderful um, organizations devoted to preserving wild horses or observing them. And you can join so many different social media, Facebook groups, or even go on YouTube and you can start, they've got cams, they've got wildlife cams on these wild horses 24/7. So you can really get an idea of what the wild horse is. And they are so different than our domesticated horses. And I keep coming back to that because for me, everything comes back to who the horse really is. And when we're dealing with domesticated horses, our own horses, we're dealing with what we've created. So we really don't even know who our horse is because they're constantly in a self-preservation mode. They're constantly being triggered, they're constantly getting stuck. And all of this comes back to, again, the rewiring, the inside of them. It is their nervous system. So, healthy horses are safe horses. But what is a healthy horse? A healthy horse is a regulated horse. When a horse is regulated, they're thinking, they're paying attention, they're present, they're not triggered. They're calm, connected, aware, they're not shut down, they're not anxious, they're not stressed, they're not explosive. These are all man-made traits. And I'm going to explain to you guys, show you guys how you can undo this. You've got to learn it. You're not going to learn the step-by-step process in this webinar, but I'm going to be showing you how you can join the step-by-step process. So this began my method 25 years ago. Getting these three challenging horses, studying with some of the best out there and hitting walls myself, not wanting to put my horses through the really rough mechanics and the tons of pressure and flooding and sacking out that they wanted to do. Um, this is what led me down the road to find a more peaceful way for the horse and a way that would truly heal them from the inside out. So, for the past 25 years, I've dedicated my life to helping thousands of horses and their humans rebuild regulation, connection, and trust. And today I'm here to share that missing link with you. So here's Sundance, part of my Trinity. This is her first expo. This is when Maryland had their Timonium and Pennsylvania still has their Harrisburg World Expos. But they closed Timonium, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. This is in front of about 1,000 people. This was packed. This was her first time. And when I first brought her out, she rolled. So that told me right then and there, she felt obviously very, she was fine. And, Sundance was an interesting horse and a very complicated horse. Sometimes some of my students join these webinars because they always learn something new and um, they like to be a part of the webinar to help support the work. So they're very familiar with Sundance, whether they've come to work with her here with me in person when she was alive, or they know her very well in the program. Um, this was one area that she was excellent at. And here I am. I climbed up on the round pen panel as I'm speaking to the audience, and I asked her to come pick me up. And this is what I teach. Like, I don't ride horses. When I'm rehabilitating a traumatized riding horse that's put their owner in the ER, I don't ride that horse until we work through the nervous system on the ground. And then I have a complete step-by-step process to getting permission to get on. So that when I do get on, the horse is not triggered. The horse is present. And from there, we will continue to rebuild, obviously, the nervous system. It's not 100% complete by the time I get on. But she came over and gave me permission and took care of me. So that's pretty incredible. And of course, I'm hanging on to the round pen because I'm not stupid. I'm like, this is our first expo. I'm not sure. All right, so here I am. Meet your host, me. I'm Caroline Best, founder of the Dow Horsemanship Academy. So I've been helping horse owners create calm, connected, emotionally sound partnerships for over 25 years now. I specialize in relationships, regulation, nervous system regulation. That's where we're going to rewire. Rehabilitation. You can't rehabilitate a horse unless you rewire the nervous system. That is the science. It's not about flooding them. It's not about desensitizing them. Rehabilitation, that's not what it's about. It's actually the worst thing you can do. It has everything to do with rewiring their nervous system. And I'm also a master at riding foundations. I'm a working equitation certified instructor here in Florida. So I have a classical background in dressage. Ooh. I also teach bitless and balanced riding, which means I teach with a bareback pad. You can come with a saddle, but no bits. There's no bits all the way up the levels. Piaffe to the canter pirouette. I don't care if we're reining, jumping, working cattle. It's all bitless. You do not need a bit to train or develop your horse. And not to mention, when you follow a methodical system like I've created, like the great masters created in classical horsemanship and classical training, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in this webinar, there is a slow progression to everything, and healthy biomechanics is number one. Developing your horse's movement on the ground comes first before you ride that movement. That is how you can ride the movement. Perfect example, how many of us are still trying to sit our horse's trot? You can't sit a trot if your horse isn't balanced. If your horse isn't balanced and the energy isn't flowing through the horse from the hind end forward, if it's not flowing through and they're not balanced, you're going to sit on that horse like a pogo stick and it's going to jar you. So it's impossible for a rider to learn how to ride if they're not riding a truly collected, balanced horse. It's a lot easier than you think, and that's what I teach. And while we're doing that on the ground, the whole biomechanics and lunging, we are naturally, organically rewiring the horse's nervous system. That is the magic of it. That's what's so amazing. So some of my accomplishments, I've been, excuse me, published in Holistic Horse when they used to be the magazine. They're now online. In Eclectic Horseman, I've been featured in several short educational videos about my business and Horse Capital TV here in Florida. I've presented numerous times at as a national clinician at the Horse World Expo and Equine Affair. As I mentioned, I'm a USAW working equitation instructor here in Florida. And so forth and so on. So, okay, so let's get to it. The common problems. So please let me know if any of these issues sound familiar to you. So here you go. You have safety issues with your horse. I don't care if it's on the ground or when you ride. It could be anytime, farrier, bathing, trailer. It could be anytime you feel unsafe around your horse. It shouldn't be that way. That is not normal. And that's one of the big myths out there. I like to call myself a myth buster. Is still today, as enlightened as we are becoming in the horse industry as professionals, there are a lot of us out there talking the same talk. I don't know if we teach the same way, but there's still a lot of trainers out there who are normalizing horses the wrong way. I'm here to change the way we normalize horses. So I'm here to say, don't accept any of this. It's not healthy and it can be changed. So if you don't feel safe around your horse, I feel safe around my horses all the time. My horses usually stand at liberty for the farrier. They always stand at liberty to get shots. They always stand at liberty to get wormed. When I always they come to me when I call them. They put their head in the halter or they come out of their stall at liberty. That's where I want to be with my horses because liberty is the truest test. If you've constantly got to hang on to your horse and hold them, then you're just micromanaging them. You're just treating a symptom. You're not developing the relationship, the trust, the respect that you need, the connection that you need. And so safety issues. I'm going to keep talking about wild horses. And for those of you that are into breeding and you've raised young babies, foals, weanlings, and you have healthy horses, you have to have healthy horses because I've had unhealthy weanlings from unhealthy mothers. So they adopt their behaviors. But if you have healthy horses, then you know, sure, you have to be careful. Babies get spunky and get kicked. Yes, I realize all that. But what I'm trying to say is you should be able to be on your hands and knees on the floor, under their belly and around their feet and not have an issue. It should be that way. If a mother knows that their foal is on the ground and will not step on their baby, if a mother doesn't step on their baby, then why should they step on you? My whole goal is that I want to be that close to my horse that I'm considered part of their family. That's what I teach. When you're considered part of their family, then they're always looking out for you. And when you rewire their nervous system, you're not going to have a reactive horse. It's not in their nature to react. When you know wild horses like I do, and like I said, there's plenty on social media now that you can join the different groups and watch these horses. 99% of the time, wild horses live in their parasympathetic nervous system, the opposite of domesticated horses. So the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for calm, rest, relaxation, and digest. That means the horse is present. And one of the facts that supports this with wild horses and horses in general, believe it or not, is horses are designed to conserve energy so that they can travel up to 20 miles a day seeking forage, food, and water sources. So they have to conserve their energy. They are designed to conserve their energy. Another word is they are designed to be lazy. Yes. Am I blowing your mind right now? I hope I am. Now, don't get me wrong. We breed horses for specific traits. Okay? So yes, you can breed a horse for specific temperament, obviously, and athletic agility, you name it. But on average, horses in general, throughout the centuries, this is their innate nature. You can call it basic psychology 101. They are designed to conserve energy. So they are always in a state of regulation. They are always paying attention, but they are relaxed. So if you've got a horse, like I said, that's calm one day and reactive the next, great in the arena, but unpredictable on the trail, this just shouldn't be. They shut down or suddenly explode. You can't catch them. They won't stand still for anything. Or maybe they just won't stand still for one specific thing. They can't be tied. They're afraid of the vet, the farrier, anybody else handling them. Hard to control on the ground. Resistant. They're pulling on you, whether you're under saddle or on the ground. They don't like to be touched. There's lots of reasons why horses don't like to be touched. They're barn or buddy sour. That's a big one. Or they struggle with new places and new environments. That's a dysregulated nervous system. That's not normal. So it's a long list and it goes on. It basically includes everything but pain points. Obviously, a dysregulated nervous system is definitely a horse that's in pain, physical pain caused by, joints, arthritis, a poor fitting saddle, or, poor fitting bit, obviously that's gonna stress them out. And when horses are stressed for long periods of time or frequently, just like us, they do get a dysregulated nervous system. The stress adds up. It constantly floods their nervous system, just like it would ours. So all of these behaviors point, as I said, to one root cause, but they're treated like symptoms. So your horse isn't being bad, they're stress signals. They're stuck in survival mode. They're talking to you. It's time we step back and stop and listen to them and not what your friends or your trainer or your instructor is telling you, to push past it, ignore it. They're being a brat. They're being stubborn. They're being this. They're being that. Horses don't choose to be like that. And they don't have, I'll say, for lack of a better word, sophisticated, brains. They don't have the third frontal lobe like we do for complex thinking and problem solving. That's just not how they're designed. So while the nervous system is attached to the brain and sends all the signals through the body, through the nervous system, through the heart, and through the brain, and that's what basically communicates to the horse what they're feeling and then what they need to do about that, they don't overanalyze it like we do. So be careful of the language that you choose. So in a horse that doesn't feel safe in their nervous system, and we'll talk about what that means, they can't connect, they can't relax, or they can't learn. Every little thing triggers them. And then we have what? Trigger stacking, it's called. So it's like everything just keeps escalating. So perfect example, and I'll never forget, was Smokey. When we finally got him on the trailer, my friend and I, to take him to a clinic when I was an ardent student studying before I developed my own method. And I was with a top professional, one of the top in the world, one of their instructors. And it took hours to get him on the trailer, and he was soaking wet. And 3 days later, after the clinic, the instructor couldn't get him on. And so this horse right here, this was exactly what Smokey would be doing. And so this particular trainer, like so many, like we're taught, will just run him around the trailer, put a lot of pressure on him, and make the wrong thing difficult and the right thing easy. So, keep stopping him at the trailer door or the ramp to the trailer, but don't let him stop until you stop there. And it never worked. So I eventually had to spend another night, and I got Smokey on calmly. Took an hour, but I got him on. I had to hand walk him on eventually. So it doesn't have to be like this. The more you push, the more they resist. Training can't fix a dysregulated horse. That's because they can't think when they're in self-preservation. Can you think when you're stressed out, when you're overwhelmed? Are you having an anxiety attack? Are you feeling defensive? Are you mad? Are you angry? Are you sad? We go through those emotions. And are we good at thinking? No. Not when our emotions flood our nervous system. It's no different for horses. So training can't fix a dysregulated horse. That's because you've got to restore regulation before you train. Now, this doesn't mean you don't learn mechanics or certain techniques to restore regulation. Obviously, you have to. But this is why so many people keep getting stuck. Why it's not working. This is common. Let me know, let everybody know if you have been there and if you agree with this. But traditional methods create learned helplessness. The horse looks compliant, but nobody's home. They've shut down, they've checked out, they've gone on autopilot. Disconnection, pressure and release tactics, they eventually might make them obey, but it doesn't make them really seek you out or bond with you. Horse doesn't choose you. and you haven't fixed anything. The horse just realizes that they absolutely have to do what you've asked them, but they're still deeply disconnected to you. Horses aren't stupid. They figure out what they need to do to survive with you. So if you keep doing a lot of pressure and release tactics to them, they'll figure it out, but it doesn't mean they want to be with you. And then there's symptom management. This is 98% of trainers. They treat the behaviors, not the root causes. So how many examples? There's a million. Let's say your horse won't back up. So instead of teaching them how to back up, and it is a process, you make them back up with a lot of pressure, a lot of force, maybe some punishment. Maybe they get smacked a couple of times until they get out of your space. But you're not teaching them. I mean, maybe you're teaching them to be afraid of you when you raise your hand or you look at them or talk to them that way. But you're not teaching them to stay out of your space. In horse training, it's all about education. And that's why after so many years of studying with some of the best, when I got back into horses, I ended up seeking some of the great classical masters because I needed to find a softer, more peaceful way of educating the horse. So the horse retains the information. They actually learn and they want to learn. So again, I can't emphasize enough about stress. And every time your horse is stressed about something, they're just one click away from either trigger stacking and adding to an already dysregulated nervous system, or they're one click away from creating a dysregulated nervous system. I think it's hard in my experience with students, with human beings as students, people, because we are so out of touch and disconnected from ourselves. You know, how many of us are aware of the level of stress that we're under? How many of us take care of our levels of stress? So one, are we even aware when we're stressed? Are we aware of what it does to our bodies, how it affects us, our health, our relationships, our well-being? So if we're not even aware of how we feel when we're stressed, it is going to be hard to open up and see our horses, to read our horses when they're stressed. So the wild horses showed me what regulated horses look and feel like: emotionally balanced, mentally present, physically safe. Again, remember the moms, all mothers, they don't step on their babies. Why should they step on you? They don't kick their babies unless their babies are getting reprimanded. Why do we get kicked? None of this should be happening. But I still needed to learn how to develop a domesticated horse into a calm, connected, and safe partner. I still hadn't learned that yet. So this began my study and research into classical training and brain science. Back then, we didn't talk about neuroscience with equines. This is like the latest research. But back then, I was already doing the research, and I'll show you and I'll explain how. So why brain science? Because I'm a survivor of panic attacks and acute anxiety. I learned at an early age how to meditate and how to rewire my nervous system. So at an early age, as a teenager, I understood the way the nervous system worked and how to rewire my brain chemistry. I just never knew horses were hardwired the same way. I never knew that until I got back into horses. And there wasn't any, I mean, the internet wasn't even working back then. You know, Facebook just started, I think, in 2008 or maybe a little bit sooner. So, you know, there wasn't a lot of research on the internet. This was all going to the library and looking up a lot of human psychology and human, it wasn't even psychology, it was physiology. It was the way the body, the chemistry, the nervous system, the body reacts to stress. And it's so that's why, I got so involved in this, and I was writing articles about it, but I wasn't technically accurate because there wasn't the current research at the time. So the word I would use, which is akin to human development and physiology, is emotional agility, and psychology, emotional agility. So that's the key word that I use throughout all my work. But emotional agility, how emotionally agile are we? See, we're not, you can't be emotionally agile if your nervous system's dysregulated. So there's an easy question for all of us. If we're easily triggered, if something easily upsets us, then that's where we get dysregulated. That's where our nervous system gets flooded with emotion. And that emotion controls just like it does the horse, our self-preservation modes of freeze, fight, or flight. And it doesn't mean that we are constantly dysregulated, but whenever we get triggered, we are. So why classical training? After studying with some of the best trainers in reining, Jack Brainerd, love Jack Brainerd, great Jack Brainerd, natural horsemanship, centered riding, and liberty, I realized I wasn't gaining the knowledge necessary to rehabilitate Smokey or any of the horses I was coming into contact with. So there was one discipline that continued to fascinate me, and that was classical training. So here I am on my off-the-track thoroughbred Lovey many, many years ago, and we are bitless and in a bareback pad, and she is doing a 20-meter canter bent in the direction of movement, which is possibly a third level dressage achievement. So this is what I teach. Doesn't mean you have to ride this way. We also trail ride, and we trail ride bitless and in a bareback pad. So I want a horse, like I said, that's well-rounded and versatile, is ready to take on any challenge I ask her to take on. So classical horsemanship is a respected training method that focuses on harmony, balance, and communication between horse and rider. Originating from centuries-old European riding schools like the Spanish School in Vienna, Austria, it develops horses physically, mentally, and emotionally. This is where my holistic approach comes in, without using force or coercion. So yes, now we're getting somewhere. So getting back to regulated horses versus dysregulated horses. Here's another off-the-track thoroughbred of mine, Billy, that I ended up selling to one of my students. And this is one of my interns riding him out alone on hundreds of acres. He raced till he was about 7, and he won many races. So most horse owners have never experienced a truly regulated horse. I mean, how many of you have? And when I say regulated, I mean, you don't know who your horse is until you expose them, right? We don't know who we are until we're exposed. But honestly, gosh, we're just as messed up as our horses. I mean, how many of us have grown up untainted by our family dynamics? I don't know of anyone that hasn't had some harm done to them by their family dynamics as a child. And we carry that throughout our life if we don't make peace with it, if we don't understand it, and we don't work through it. And so where I'm going with that is it's hard, like I said, it's really hard unless you've studied the wild horses or you know how to raise a baby without messing them up, a foal. You get to see untainted life and how easy they are. Easy. Wild horses are easy to train. They just have a lot of self-preservation. You have to figure out where they are in their self-preservation and give them the time to decide when they want to trust you, decide when they want to work with you. Once they decide and you're okay by them, it's on. They're smarter than domesticated horses. They are so smart, and horses are such quick learners. You just got to get past that first test with a wild horse, and that's understandable because that's their self-preservation mode. So there's no breaking horses in my book. It's gentling them, it's getting to know them and waiting for them to accept you, and then it's on. You're wide open. So this is why so many horses, like I said earlier, get mislabeled. Are there willful horses? Absolutely. Strong-willed horses. Are there stubborn horses? No. Are there testing horses? No. Disrespectful? No. Lazy by nature? Yes. Resisting? No. We create all of this, or we don't teach it. So a young horse, sure, they're going to become disrespectful if we don't teach them how to respect our space. If we don't teach them behavior like their mother does. And yes, there are horses that have a lot lower energy levels than other horses. Absolutely. And for many different reasons. To me, I respect that. I'm not going to expect my 2,000-pound, 18-hand Frisian sport horse, Zor, to be able, he's a beautiful mover, but um, he's not sustainable. He can't, he's one and done. He's too big. He gets hot too fast. His natural instincts for his size are telling him to conserve his energy even more. So, we have to be really fair. We have to understand the horse and where they're coming from. Get to know your horse. Get to know your horse first. So, like I said, stubborn's not normal. Lazy is not normal, the way we interpret lazy. Resistance is not normal. Another big myth I would like to bring up along the lines of lazy horses, wild horses are naturally more passive by nature. All horses are more passive by nature. I'm not talking about stallions. I'm talking about, let's just do a herd of mares that choose. These horses also get to choose each other. It's not the same for domesticated horses. But when they choose their herds and they all get along and they want to get along, it's important to survival to get along and to not have chaos. And of course, they're conserving energy. So you can call it lazy, but they are conserving energy and they are more passive. You're going to have more dominant personalities. I'm not saying that there's not dominant personalities or more passive or subservient personalities, but as a general rule, horses don't like aggression. They fear that. They're prey animals. They're not predators. So there's so many labels out there about horses, that my horses just, you have to show them who's boss. So remember, every behavior is communication. Every reaction has a reason. Every problem is an unmet need. Once you understand this, everything changes. Sometimes just changing your mindset, just being aware that, hey, I'm asking my horse to go in this direction, and for some reason they don't want to go. Is it a threshold? Is it a physical threshold? Is it also an emotional threshold that they've just gone too far, whether it's a trail ride or we're in the arena and they don't like working in this one area? All of this should not be a problem, is what I'm saying. So I don't have to know, as an equine rehab specialist, I don't need to know your horse's history at all. Every horse goes through an assessment, and that's what I teach in my method, is how to assess your horse. So you kind of get a baseline of who you're working with, but they're going to go through the same litany of exercises to help regulate their nervous system regardless. They all are. And once their nervous system is regulated, then they're going to be open to connecting relationships, to working with you, to having a conversation. They're not going to be reactive. They're thinkers. They're going to be able to trust you because you've earned it by helping them work through their nervous system regulation. And then by the time you get to the old spot that was a problem, whatever it is, the trailer, the stream, the woods, the arena, the around the corner of the barn, it's not going to be an issue anymore. It just fixes itself. Nervous system regulation fixes everything. And there's a whole science to this, you guys. It rewires the brain. It rewires the new memory and replaces the old memories with new memories. That's how profound it is. It's the same for us. So this became the revelation for me, how science, classical training, and a holistic approach creates a well-rounded and versatile horse who's regulated, healthy, and happy to be with you and work with you. So training should always begin with relaxation, not obedience. Do you guys even know what relaxation looks like? Do you know what stress looks like in your horse? In the eye, in the neck, in the mouth, in the ears, in the body? Do you know what it looks like? Do you know what it feels like? You really need to train yourself between stress and relaxation. And if you don't know what relaxation looks like I said, study these wild horses and these social media online groups. Work with me. Obviously, this is one of my third off the track uh, thoroughbreds that I still have here, Jojo. Look how relaxed he is. So here's relaxed. I call these gremlin ears. Soft eye. The neck is below the wither. The body is relaxed. The movement is relaxed. So most training starts by making the horse respond. Horses are smart, you guys. My method starts by getting the horse's attention. And then again, you have to assess them. If I get their attention, does that just send them off? Does that trigger them? Or does that pique their curiosity? So I'll give you one of my secrets to assessing horses. It is this black and white. This is easy. Remember this. Is your horse confident or are they unconfident? Are they a confident learner or an unconfident learner? I have specific exercises in the way I teach. For every horse, they go through the same emotional agility tests to see how they rank on a scale of are you confident or are you unconfident? Because if you're unconfident, you're dysregulated. Things are going to trigger you. It's that black and white. If you're confident, you're what? You're curious. Your horse is curious. They're open. Just like our babies until we ruin it, till we knock the curiosity out of them and replace it with fear. So a classical approach to training, and believe me, there's a lot of bad dressage out there. There's a lot of bad everything out there. But I did follow, and I still do, classical training. Begins by helping the horse feel safe enough to respond. So it's understanding when you're pushing your horse out of their comfort in learning, which is healthy, stretching them, but not to the point where you've now created stress. You want to pique their interest. This is the other secret in the balancing act. You want to pique their interest. You want to keep them stimulated, interested, but you don't want them stressed. Now, don't get me wrong. When I'm rehabilitating horses, believe me, they're stressed, aren't they? I didn't create that stress. So, God, everything I'm doing is going to stress them. But there is a way of working as a specialist where you know and you identify and you see the stress points and you know how to bring the horse off or down from that ledge and give them time to feel safe again before you bring them back up closer to that ledge. And yes, this is what I teach. So by prioritizing rhythm, this is why biomechanics and lunging is so important when it's done correctly. By prioritizing rhythm, softness, and emotional connection, classical work gently shifts the horse out of a survival mode, like I'm talking about, and into a parasympathetic state where learning, curiosity, and connection live. A horse can only regulate when they feel seen, when they know you're paying attention. Supported, they can feel what you're feeling.
Okay.
And free from pressure. that overwhelms their system. Don't get me wrong, pressure is a constant. It's everywhere, and it certainly is in training, but it's how you apply pressure. That's the key. It's all about the feel and timing of everything. So classical principles show you how to build these steps. Here's another wonderful, this is one of my interns working with Lovey, one of my thoroughbreds off the track, and you see that level of stretch and top line relaxation. Look at the eye, the relaxed eyes. She's paying attention to Emma. She's stretching. And this is early on in Lovey's rehabilitation from being off the track. So this isn't at her finest. So how to influence the nervous system? The nervous system and the musculoskeletal systems are inseparable. So the nervous system and the musculoskeletal systems are inseparable. This means how a horse moves affects how a horse feels. So let me give you a great example. How many of you have witnessed or experienced for yourself a young new green horse or even an older horse that you've seen someone lunging or you started lunging and someone put them straight into a trot or a canter or you did and they started bucking? So how a horse moves affects how a horse feels. So this all goes back to Horses 101, the wild horse. The worst thing a wild horse can have is a broken leg. That's death. Now, I've seen plenty, believe it or not, survive through these cams. But where I'm headed with this is that too often, especially with lunging, most people don't know what the hell they're doing. And they start running these young horses or these older horses around, and the young horses don't have strength or balance to handle these circles. And so they get scared. They get scared. And that's why they speed up, they change direction, and they kick out. And for the older horses, a lot of them have arthritis. And at the same time, they're out of shape. They don't have the strength or the balance either. And so, people just start thinking, well, I haven't ridden this horse in a while. Horses, pent up all the time, whether it's a stall or a small pasture or a paddock. And so they just think that, well, I'm just going to start running this horse and getting it in shape or getting the kinks or the piss and vinegar out of them. And it's the worst thing you can do. And this is how so many horses get ruined big time with round penning, free lunging, and they immediately have dysregulated nervous systems because you're flooding the body with adrenaline. So in the wild, remember, if a horse is lazy in the wild to conserve energy, they're walking 99% of the time or 95% of the time, grazing, sleeping. So when they have to pick up speed for fight or flight from a predator or perceived danger, they naturally flood their entire body, their nervous system. They flood it with adrenaline to get them moving. And that is what happens to them naturally. So when your horse has never been lunged or they haven't been lunged in a long time, all of a sudden you're flooding their body with adrenaline. What do you think it does to them? It makes them feel awful. Not to mention they don't have the strength or balance to handle that movement, whether you're riding them or free lunging them. So this is again why I love classical training the way I'm teaching it too, because it's a slow, methodical, biomechanically correct way for any age. So classical training develops true engagement of the hindquarters, especially when you allow the horse to freely move and find how to move correctly. They will drop their nose to the ground and create that beautiful longitudinal stretch. You don't have to make it happen. You should never make it happen with forced equipment. They lift up the back instead of hollowing. So that whole lifting of the back is what I was talking about earlier on in this webinar about No one should be riding a horse's movement that hasn't been developed first on the ground. So when Lovey has in this photograph is developing the trot, you can see that she's creating a slight bascule, a slight rounding of the top line here. When she rounds that top line, that means her hindquarters, she could be stretching a little bit more. She isn't, and she does now. This is a long time ago, early on. But typically, that inside hind leg would be creating, there she is older, would be creating a V and would be taking the, see how she's not tracking up? So now she tracks. Now that inside hind leg would take the hoof print of the, or that's her outside hind would take the hoof print of the outside fore. So that means she's using her hind end. That's lifting the back. And that's what creates beautiful movement. That's what creates self-carriage and collected movement. So you want free elastic movement that encourages release rather than brace. And the beauty of all of this, when you do it right, is you're regulating the nervous system. Yep. So science behind that is, this is what I learned when I was suffering acute panic attacks. And what I learned was meditative breathing. But any rhythmic movement, anything rhythmic, helps you release endorphin and dopamine. Dopamine. Dopamine is the strongest chemical for relaxation and addiction. It's stronger than heroin. Dopamine. So when your horse finds rhythm, a rhythmic movement in their trot, we also call that a regulated movement. It's regulated, it's regular, it's consistent. When they get that regulation and that rhythm, that tells you right then and there, they're in a regulated nervous system. It's the horses that are inconsistent. They're speeding up, slowing down, changing direction, panicking. All of that is dysregulation. So we need to get it regulated. So you just keep working on regulating the movements, helping the horse find the rhythm in the movement. And when they do, it feels good because they're releasing the endorphin and the dopamine instead of the adrenaline, which is telling them, go, 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 survive, survive, survive. This is so full circle, the way that I teach and work, that your horse will love working with you and everything you do because it always feels good. It feels good because of the relationship, because the love is there, the heart coherence is there, the praise is there, but it feels good physically and physiology, the whole physiology within the body changes. So breath-led transitions that restore rhythm. Yes, there's a lot of breath work in my work. Yes, absolutely. So here's Lovey, my oh my, probably 6 years later. And now you can see her totally tracking and look how much she's filled out. And look at, this is my thoroughbred that looks like a warm blood. Look at that neck. Look at that lift in the shoulder and look at that butt, that rump. So these biomechanical changes stimulate the vagus nerve, release tension from the pole where you want to ride, and you want to have connection when you ride at the pole, to the tail, and reduce the horse's sympathetic load. As the horse moves in balance, the body sends signals of safety to the brain and the nervous system follows. And the horse feels in control. They feel in control. It's beautiful. And here she is again. The training, this is much younger, years before. The training becomes a sanctuary now. Like I said, every time, every space that you guys come into, wherever your training is, wherever your energy is together, this is a feel good. So where the horse feels supported, not corrected, there's times to correct, but not in the beginning of learning. Guided, not controlled. So regulation happens through experiences of consistent, predictable interaction. Consistent, predictable interaction. in the beginning. And this is what the foundation is all about. So once you have a really strong foundation on the ground in riding, you can do anything with your horse. Anything. Classical horsemanship is built on clear patterns that lower anxiety, subtle cues that communicate without overwhelm. You learn this. Repetition that creates familiarity, not boredom, not at all. It's way too layered and connected for that. Soft pressure and release that invites rather than forces. This compassionate, consistent approach tells the horse's nervous system you're safe, you can relax, you can connect, and you can learn. And there's Zor and Lovey. And here's Lovey this is what it's like tacking her up. All my horses are tacked up. Even the little Mustang I gentled and am now riding. Everybody's tacked up without being tied, and nobody has their bitless bridle on. A regulated nervous system isn't created through technique alone, it's created through relationship, your compassion, your observation, your care. So classical principles produce a horse who trusts, a rider who listens, a partnership that co-regulates together. Your nervous systems are working together. This is how you synchronize. This is the deepest connection. And so wild horses are always synchronized in their nervous system. I used to write about this before the research. It still isn't 100% proven. It's getting out there, though, closer and closer. But in my personal experiences and observations and testing throughout the years, I absolutely believed and experienced time and time again, not only connecting and co-regulating with the horses that I was working with and nervous system, but understanding horses as a herd, whether they were wild or domesticated, that there is this sixth sense, and the sixth sense is the nervous system. And now we have Heart Math Institute coming out 20 years ago they did research. They monitored the horse's heart and the heart frequency because it's such a large organ. It's one of their largest organs. And that's why they do so well with therapy. Because when you have a calm horse, its HRV, heart rate variability, is very low and soothing, producing endorphin and dopamine, creating a regulated nervous system. So when we are in the presence of that frequency, which can be felt as far away as 25 feet from the horse, we can start to co-regulate with their heartbeat. They can pull us into the same frequency. Now, it works both ways. So if you have a dysregulated horse who's overly anxious, and they're not going to feel you even if you are grounded, even if you are calm. Trust me, it takes a long time to break through, but you can do it. You absolutely can do it. So it's pretty wild when you start to understand how powerful energy is and heart rate variability in the nervous system and heart coherence. It's all real. It used to be so woo-wooey. I've been teaching this forever, and I'm just so happy that the science is out there, supporting it now. But when we co-regulate, this is when we actually will breathe together, move together, think together. And that's because our nervous systems are harmonizing. My work teaches you how to synchronize, how to do this. So this is how classical training combined with the understanding of science and a holistic approach produces calm, confident, emotionally sound horses, because it honors the horse's inner world as much as their outer performance. Here's me hugging Sundance after a wonderful performance. So the solution, the best part now, you don't have to figure this all out. This is a lot of information. I've already connected all the dots. Been doing it for a long time. I have an ideal solution for you and your horse that will help guide the both of you step by step through everything needed to feel safe, regulated, and connected. It doesn't matter what your problems are. That's the beauty of repairing the nervous system, is it will repair everything. So honestly, people come to me with every problem. I've handled everything. And let's just take trailer loading. My horse will not go in the trailer. You start with this nervous system regulation first. Then you're going to be testing it, not with the trailer at first, but you're going to test it because I've got things set up to test. The ultimate test will be the trailer. But by the time you get to the trailer, your horse will be loading themselves in the trailer, or at least going in with you without a hesitation. Why? Because you've done all the work to gain their trust, to be a leader and a partner for them, to help them restore their nervous system so they can think and not react, so that you've also created new neural pathways in the brain, new memories. And you've been testing, building their confidence with situations. So by the time you get to the big scary thing, you're gonna have a conversation with your horse. They're gonna trust you because you haven't let them down. And they're gonna feel so different about the entire experience. It's gonna be an entirely new experience for them. This is the science. This is how it works. So, what's the solution? The step-by-step solution? My dream riding partnership program. Achieve the relationship and riding partnership of your dreams with horses. This is your roadmap. It's a comprehensive system designed to cultivate nervous system regulation, classical balance, and genuine partnership. Real, true, lasting partnership. Not where you force and make your horse fight and struggle and hope for a better day tomorrow. Where you guys have a conversation, you work through it, you build what you need to build so that your horse doesn't test you, they trust you. This program focuses on every aspect of the riding experience, from internal regulation to relationships, groundwork, rehabilitation to recovery, and it caters to all levels. I have trainers that have joined this because of the subtlety and the finesse of it, not to mention learning how to ride with a true independent balanced seat and developing horses that you feel confident enough to ride and they feel confident enough to be ridden this way and bitless, all the way up to second level dressage, if you so choose. And if you don't, you're developing a well-rounded horse nonetheless. How it works: a comprehensive step-by-step system built on 3 pillars: classical horsemanship, neuroscience, and holism. Holism, feel and think as one. Science, where evidence supports the data. Classical training, you're going to ride as one. Where you think it, you feel it, you move as one. You're going to learn this on the ground first, though, the 2 of you. And you're going to be rebuilding the nervous system while you're doing it. So you will learn how to recognize emotional states in your horse. There's many. Read advanced behavioral cues. What does this mean? What do I do with this information? Decode micro expressions. That's where everyone gets really stuck. The micro expressions. Understand stress versus relaxation. Apply memory rewriting. Yep, that's the whole neural pathways, neuroscience. Use stress release techniques. Communicate clearly. That's where it's going to develop your leadership. Develops you as much as it develops the horse. Respect boundaries and thresholds so we don't trigger stack our horse. Train without force, fear, or coercion. Treats. You are the treat. Your love in your relationship is all your horse wants and needs. And so that's when you earn that, they're going to treat you like a baby. And I mean that in a good way. They are not going to step on you, kick you. They're going to protect you. And that's what you want. You want to become part of the family. So part of all of this is learning how to assess your horse. And that's a big component of what I teach, is learning how to assess your horse. So we're talking about rehabilitation and rehabilitating the nervous system before we even train. So if you're having problems with your horses, then you need to diagnose what those problems are. And I'm not saying, well, the problem is they don't like this corner, or they don't like this horse, or they don't like the trailer, or they don't. That's not the problem, so to speak. Those are all symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system. What I'm trying to identify is the number one problem to all of these symptoms is the nervous system. Once your horse's nervous system is my wild Mustang is the perfect example. He was literally saved from a truck, literally pulled, he and another Mustang pulled from a truck going to Mexico for slaughter. And he was starved. I have a whole documentary on him. He's all over my YouTube. Hmm. Excuse me. And once I earned his trust to touch him, and it took about 2 weeks, that's it. And it's all quiet energy work. All I did was I was the one that fed him, cleaned the round pen where he stayed, gave him fresh water, and just did what I teach. And in 2 weeks, kept pulling the food closer and closer. And in 2 weeks, I was able to touch him. And that was pretty much it. From there, we just kept going forward. Nothing was a problem. He self-loaded into the trailer, even though he was trailered here and he was untouched. He had definitely come from a holding facility somewhere in Nevada, Nebraska, and then he was in Texas, and nothing's an issue for him. My horses can run around and decide to get spooked about something while we're all out working together, and he's the only one standing there looking at me like, why are they acting like that? He's not afraid of anything. And if he is unsure, he just stops. And that's fine. I pay attention and I go and love on him and I wait. And he looks at me and he looks at whatever and he licks and chews and he's fine. So often we don't pay enough attention to even see those subtle cues of the horse just needs a little bit of time to decide. So assessing is really important. So why my method works? 25 years with thousands of students, 2 and 4-legged. It's very deep and comprehensive. It's clear, it has clarity, it's emotionally intelligent. It has a testing process. It's been tested and tested and tested. It has heart, it has foundation, proven results, and it transforms horses and humans from the inside out. So here's just a short, not a short, but a small collage of some of my students doing some amazing things with horses, their own horses. So don't just take my word for it. You guys are going to hear, I've got some video testimonies. I've got a ton on my YouTube channel. I've got a ton on my website. So before and after transformations, I'm going to jump to that. So thousands of students have achieved success using my method. These are normal, predictable outcomes when you work with horses the way they're naturally designed to learn. So any horse, this works for all horses because they're all designed with the same nervous system.